You do it very well. And I think you're probably a very good person to ask about the state of universities, because in the US, there's something going on right now. And I think it's actually missing the woods through the trees, because it's people are talking about how the Trump administration is going to say, if you aren't actually physically taking classes, but you're from another country, then your visa is no longer valid and you have to go home. What most people don't realize is that a huge percentage of the operating budgets of schools, particularly state schools, it comes from foreign students that pay full tuition. They pay private level tuition to go to a state school. And without that cash coming in on August 15th, you're going to watch universities not be able to pay their bills. So I think there's like an air of like, hey, we're looking out for our poor graduate students. But in fact, it's actually a fight, life or death, whether or not these universities will survive. Is that going on in the UK right now? Do you see a parallel?
Yes, it is going on here, although maybe not quite as politicized about overseas students. It's actually more pragmatic, which is that the coronavirus issue has led the university sector, I think, to be far too cautious about reopening the universities in October in any kind of normal or proper sense. And of course, a lot of overseas students, if they're going to pay that much money, are not going to come here, right? I mean, and so in fact, by default, a lot of universities are going to lose overseas students' fees. And, you know, I think Trump is making a real error here. Yeah, I mean, you know, it wouldn't be the first time I'd have disagreed with him, but I really think it's counterproductive what he's doing from his own point of view. See, the thing about overseas students in any country is that they come in a temporary way, but they actually, not only do they provide fees, but they actually open up the universities, I hope my internet's okay, it's saying it's unstable. Some of the people who are going to be your great innovators, some of the people who are going to be your allies in terms of business in the future. You know, it's part of being part of the world. Now, it doesn't have to be tangled up with immigration or concerns about these kind of more political issues. It can just be a very positive step for any country to have people who want to study. I mean, American universities are fantastic. A lot of them, not all of them, are fantastic universities, and you want to be world class. You want the best physicists. You want the people who are the smartest engineers. You want the brightest artists to want to study in America, because that's going to help America. So if Trump wants to make America great, it's a good thing to have that. And it would be silly, it seems to me, and counterproductive. It will lead to a lot of universities closing. But just one of the things
I
to say,
see your point on that, but
yeah.
I'm watching what I think is one of the great dangers of a society, which is to have an indebted young class, particularly a young intelligentsia class, which they're going into school, they're taking on massive amounts of debt that they may not be able to pay off in an entire lifetime of work, and they come out with these degrees where they're not necessarily prepared for the office environment,
Yeah.
and so now you have people with debt that can't contribute, that is being exacerbated by the universities. And I don't see another way to stop this other than to stop the universities for a little while, to make them feel the pain of having an administrative class within the universities that are sucking money out of all the young people.
Yeah, so that's, in a way, a different question, though. I don't know that depriving overseas students' fees is the way to go. But I do agree with 5 years ago, I think in the UK, they started setting a target, maybe later than that, of 50% of all young people should go to university. And I think that's ludicrous, right? Because it wasn't about removing the barriers for young working class kids to go to universities. That would be brilliant, because that would be allowing those people who are academic to go to university. Of course, you don't want it just to be an elitist pastime, but university is not for everyone. And through doing not everybody wants to live the life of the mind, right? It's not a compulsory thing. But by setting a 50% target, you've ended up changing the job market so that effectively you now need a degree in order to get jobs that you didn't need a degree for before. And these young people are ending up with massive debts, a very swollen university sector the meaning of going to university and what a purpose of a university is almost forgotten, because now it's just almost a road to work. And in the meantime, you've got this degenerate atmosphere that's emerged on university campuses in relation to politics. And I say degenerate because there's also been at the same time the emergence of what's called political correctness, postmodernism. There's no such thing as truth, post-structuralism. And so a lot of young people are kind of embroiled in the culture wars via university, whilst actually studying at great expense to get a degree that's not actually content-wise very challenging very often, in order to get a job that you don't need a degree for in the first place. I mean, what's the point of all that? And at the same time, it creates a them and us atmosphere here, certainly, which is if you don't go to university now, it's almost as though you're written off as a young person. If 50% are going and 50% aren't, then the 50% who aren't are sort of somehow lesser citizens. If you had a situation where those people who wanted to pursue academic study, which that should be allowed, and any country should provide for that, and 10% of those young people went to university, or 10 or 15, then that would be fine. But then they wouldn't be allowed to be the dominant way that young people understand success. So I think it's a real shame that people see universities now not as an opportunity to study knowledge for its own sake, but as a necessary step in order to get into the job market, and they get massive debt in order to do so. And at the same time, they're exposed to some pretty grim political regressive trends.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you're interested in the subjects that we're talking about, or the idea of how do you get better at communications, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. There, listeners like you can meet other listeners from all over the world. You can put up talks that you've given to ask for feedback and ways to improve, and you can even take courses that'll help you become a tangibly better communicator. That's the Articulate Ventures Network with the link below.